Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Bloop. This is our third installment of Redeeming Love. And
Third and final, right?
Third and final. And we get to talk about what I've been waiting for this whole time, the movie. Of Redeeming Love, yes. I just recently rewatched the movie, so I'm excited to get to talk about it today. So without further ado, I guess we'll roll right in, and we're gonna show some pictures of the cast. And again, if you're just watching, there's going to be a ton of spoilers.
Let's talk first. What would you give? Star rating wise.
I forgot about that.
On a scale of 1 to 5 stars, 1 being bleh and 5 being amazing.
I would still give the movie a 5, even though I personally feel like the book, of course, did it better. But the movie and the time allotment that's allowed in a movie, I think that they did a terrific job of staying true to the book. I didn't see them go crazy with adding things in. Yes, there's some scenes that were in the book that didn't make it to the movie, but again, I feel like that was for time. And I think with how they delivered, it was fantastic. I have no bad review about the movie. What about you?
I give it 5 stars. Based on just like a movie, not comparing it to the book at this point. Just as a movie itself, I thought the acting was done well. I thought they portrayed really difficult topics well, which is the best of their ability. And, Hollywoodized version of things, like they could have taken things way beyond the mark, but I felt like they stayed true to like the book's rating that we gave it of YA 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like
now this movie was rated PG-13. Do you feel like that was a good rating for this movie?
With the ratings creep that's happening and what PG-13 that I'm like familiar with, I feel like yes, in terms of movie standards, from what we've grown to expect from PG-13. Would I take my 13-year-old to see it? No.
Yeah, I agree as well. I don't feel like I would take my 13-year-old to see this movie because there was a lot. I mean, again, with the book and also true to the movie too, there's a lot of heavy topics that I don't think a 13-year-old is mature enough to view.
Yeah, agreed.
So now, do you want to get into the characters, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's talk about the characters. If we could pull up the cast on here. So if you go...
I'm going to go back one, I think.
All right, down right there, just click it.
Or just this one?
Mm-hmm. You go on the right. Well, we don't have their names, but...
Well, let me go back to the big one.
Okay, there you go.
Here's this one. So.
Okay, so, I will say let's like share. So we are involved in a book club, and some of the women were disappointed initially, and I even think still after seeing the movie, they're disappointed with who was cast as Michael Hosea. Because in their minds, and the way the book kind of portrays him as like this big presence, right? So you associate, or a lot of people associate, he runs a farm. He was running a farm all by himself, and he's got a big presence. So they're thinking tall, very built, muscular, strong. You're in the sun a lot, so you're very tan. Maybe has aged a little bit than his early 20s. He might look like late 20s because when you're in the sun all the time. I liked him. I liked who played him.
I would have rather him been bigger, but like as far as muscles and stuff like that. But I did like the actor that played him. I think that he was.
I feel like I kind of feel like almost it was done purposely because she was so dominated by so many men, and physically he would be very intimidating if he was like this big. Like he almost had like I don't know, like a giant presence. Like he was just big. It
Big
just
guy.
felt like a big dude.
Yeah.
And for everything that she's experienced, it would be another obstacle for her to get over. In my mind.
It could be.
So I feel like maybe that was the intent behind that, and then he wouldn't be so intimidating to her.
But I mean, he's still a good-looking guy. I thought he played him well.
Mm-hmm.
After I started watching the movie, I kind of got over the fact that, oh gosh, I wanted him to be like Rip from.
Well, yeah.
I've
only seen one episode of that, so.
Yeah, so from Yellowstone, Rip from Yellowstone. I mean, that's what I envisioned when I first thought about who would cast Michael Hosea, but no, and Rip is a little bit too old for this role, but anyway,
quite too old.
Yeah, so I think that they did a good job. I liked him, and I think that the girl that played Angel was just absolutely
Abigail Cohen, yeah,
absolutely phenomenal,
stunning,
beautiful,
stunning. Both just really captured Angel, I thought.
Yeah, and she was a very good actress. I mean, like she did well. I think the whole entire cast.
The cast was great.
I was a little upset that Eric Dane played Duke because he's McSteamy. Come on, like,
dude, to take that role. Well, Eric Dane, it has his name under it. So Eric Dane, for him to take the role, like, what goes through your mind? You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're gonna accept a role like that to play basically a pedophile. Look, he has 2 young daughters. Oh my gosh. It must be really hard mentally to, like,
go into that role. Yeah.
And then to risk, because I know I would imagine, do you ever just have like an actor who's just like so good at being the villain?
Yeah.
It's like you can't help but hate them a little bit after for a while.
I know that a lot of actors have had that issue where they're not seen as anything other than this. So they've had a hard time. So, like,
that's a risk.
Yeah.
That's such a risk.
Well, it's a good thing that he did stuff before this.
I know, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Well,
I didn't hate him after. I didn't hate you, Eric, but I just think I just respected the job that they did and how they portrayed who Eric played the Duke, who the Duke was, without scarring us.
Yes. They didn't get too detailed. I mean, it was implied. A lot of things were implied, but you didn't see a lot of things. So that's good. And I felt like, there wasn't any nudity really. I mean, you
partial.
You saw partial nudity, but you didn't. I mean, Angel is.
She's always covered.
She's covered, like her hair covers her breasts, and you don't see her backside. I mean, you just kind of see her silhouetted, and you obviously know she's nude, but it's not. And the sexual interactions that she had with Michael Hosea they're not poorly done. They're very tasteful. Yeah, and their feelings for each other overshadow what is actually going on. I mean, I feel like it was more emotional than it was, just watching the scene.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I feel like everybody in the cast did great. Nina Dobrev, which is the mom. The dad I pictured a little differently. And granted, we see him like older, 10 years later. I pictured like a Matt Bowman type, or what's his name from Vampire Diaries?
I didn't watch it.
I only watched like one season, but he had like really dark hair, blue eyes, very sharp. She kept talking about how sharp his features were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there is a part in that part.
So the guy who played him just felt just not as.
I thought I didn't actually picture anyone when I was reading.
Yeah,
when I was reading the book or anything, I didn't picture anybody. He was like a faceless figure when I was reading it.
No. What's his name from Vampire Diaries? Let's see. Usually very abusive people, for some reason, when I'm reading a book, they just become faceless to me. I
just don't even see them. They become like they're faceless, but they're still a person. I just don't see features.
Somerhalder. You know who he is without.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen him before. That's who you pictured.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just sharp angles. Yep. That. Talked about how he had really dark hair. He was like very attractive, handsome, sharp angles. That's like a really nice jawline. But even his eyes, just everything's very like cunning and yeah. Sorry, Ian, but in that picture you look like somebody who would. You're doing something on the side.
What if you?
I want to share experience really quick about going to the movie. So as we said, we're in a book club, right? And so we wanted to see the movie together, and we went all together.
Yeah, we all went together
to see the movie.
There was a bunch of us.
And there was a part where at the end, there was a woman. We didn't notice her till after. She was sitting by herself in like a couple rows behind us, and we wound up inviting her to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool to hear her story and hear kind of like how she was struggling and kind of what better chance than a movie to like, show Christ for a minute. And we invited her to come with us to dinner, and she agreed and came. And then like, she literally like without us even knowing, she came back. We thought she went to the bathroom, and she let us know.
She paid for our dinner.
We're like, where's the bill? We've been asking for the bill. She's like, oh, I paid for it. We're like,
yeah, and there was like, I don't know,
a lot of
us, like 6, 7 of us,
7 or 8 of us.
Yeah. So
anyways, so it just goes to show you like when God puts it on your heart to speak to somebody, and you do, you get it, especially after a movie like this, and you do, and like how grateful. I mean, she did not have to do that, but I think she was just so grateful for spending time. I think she was lonely, and
yeah, she was lonely for sure. Could tell she was lonely. If you read Redeeming Love, which we did, what parts of the story stood out to you differently in the film?
There was one scene for me that I thought was a little rushed, and I felt like it didn't give God the credit that it needed to. I think that was one thing the film was missing, was that there wasn't a lot of the emphasis was placed on Michael and his works and credit given to him. And we talked about that last episode where God was like, you didn't idolize me, but she idolized you. And we're not going to have that. And so basically, to me, the one part that stuck out, though, was I was waiting for her to show up on stage once Duke got her back in the blue dress. And it was not blue. That was like a different thing there. And then she doesn't sing.
Yeah, she doesn't sing at all.
So we talked about this last week too, like where we felt like where was God, like when did she discover God was pursuing her? I think that was one of the questions. And that was a pivotal moment because the Holy Spirit gave her the lyrics, the memories and lyrics to a song that she sang that caught the attention of a man outside who was brought into the establishment that he would never walk into otherwise.
Right.
And her whole life changed in that moment. But as soon as she finished singing the song, she didn't remember the lyrics at all. And so there was no other explanation for her than God was with her. Right. And so through that knowledge, she was able to not only save herself out of that moment, she rescued 2 other girls. And so they did. They go on to rescue, and everything else kind of stays true. But we missed that whole pivotal moment.
Right. Well, all the movie does is have her have a vision of her mom saying, "Never give up" or something like that.
Don't tell the truth.
Yeah, tell the truth. And so obviously she does. She just calls Duke out. Duke likes little girls, is what he said.
Yeah, it was just so like,
and it was just so, and all of a sudden she's rushing. It did not play out that way in the book at all.
Like in the book, it's like she's walking out with the girls, and he's like, why are these girls in this establishment? And she's like, what do you think, mister?
Yeah.
And then you just watch the realization. And it was like, justice is about to be served.
Yes. And then he did get hung at the end, just like in the book. So again, it stayed true, but it just felt like...
I just missed... we just missed, for me, I missed a couple of those pivotal moments where the glory is to be to God,
Right.
not to Michael.
And there was all throughout the book, Michael would read the Bible to her every night. In the book, it's kind of glazed over. I mean, he does have the Bible
movie,
out on
it's
the
glazed over. You said book.
I'm sorry. In the movie, it's glazed over. There's a Bible out on the table, but he's not doing all the things. And I'm sure that there was issues with that since it was all, I mean, they do talk about God a little bit here and there in the movie, but not as much as the book, obviously. Here, you read the next question because I read the last one.
Okay. Did you enjoy the cinematography and music, and like, how did it contribute to the storytelling? So like camera angles and the way they shot scenes and music.
No, again, I thought that they did great. I thought that the score, the music was great. I loved that they used Lauren Daigle.
That song
at the end, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
even in the trailer.
Talk
about being a little verklempt.
No, I think they did great. The camera angles on, I mean, especially in the last scene where she comes back for the last time. She comes back after being gone for a couple years. At this point, she comes back. In the book, it has her taking off her clothes because she wants to be bare to Michael. But obviously they didn't do that in the movie. But it's still, I still felt like you didn't miss too much in that moment.
She's saying, "I'm no longer hidden. This is me.
Right.
And it's a fresh, clean start.
And then she says,
I'm yours and you're mine."
Right. And she finally says to him, she says, my name's Sarah. We're gonna cry just sitting here.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, because
that's not good.
Yeah, and he didn't obviously know her name, so
nobody knew her name except for her mom.
And she said, "This is the first time I'm telling anyone my name."
Yeah.
So she was actually able to give him something, which she'd never given anybody, which was her identity.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
Yes. So, what we didn't talk about last time was in what ways did God reward Sarah and Michael? That's another thing to talk about. So we talked about last week, like our first episode, it was pretty dark. Like there's a lot of hard stuff. And then we talked about the questions kind of were leading us to, okay, there's thawing of the heart and, she's feeling God pursue her. And now, we're talking about the movie, but also focusing our discussion on the way God restored her and her relationship with Michael and all of that. So, do you want to share how God rewarded them? Did the movie show that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did look forward. That's right.
Yeah, the very last scene in the movie, it shows, because you remember the whole reason why she left the second time was because she felt like, well, she just knew that she couldn't have any children because of this abortion that had ripped her apart.
Upon her, yeah.
And it was forced upon her, and she left because she wanted Michael to be able to have the gift of children. And she felt like she was taking something from him by never being able to have children.
Yeah.
So the very last scene, you see them by the lake where she learned to fish. Like Michael taught her how to fish. He taught her how to do everything. Yeah. And she's pregnant. And then there's a little boy next to her that's fishing or catching tadpoles or whatever he was doing next to her. So that was really cool that God gave them children at the end.
I know, which is another amazing miracle, because think about how many opportunities there were for her to be pregnant or get pregnant with the line of work that she was enslaved in.
Well, yeah. And who knows, like medically, like I don't even know. That's another topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next. Are abused women, I think we touched on this last time, are abused women and children treated differently?
Yeah, we talked about the handouts versus handouts.
Yep.
Sometimes, we can talk about this a little more, and I think this is when we should talk about the dad.
Oh, we haven't talked about that.
Yeah.
Sometimes reading an intense scene is different from seeing it on screen. Which scenes did you enjoy seeing played out? Which scenes were hard to watch?
You're making a liar out of me because I'm like, let's talk about the dad, and I'm like, well, it's going to be lighter. This is not. I'm a liar. Apparently, sorry.
Which scenes did you enjoy being played out? Okay, well, we enjoyed seeing the babies at the end, right? Like,
Yes,
most of the scenes were
uh-huh.
super hard, and they were hard to read about, but then when you saw them
Yeah.
in the movie, granted, when I read the book, my imagination was a little bit darker than the movie was, but when
Okay, so because sometimes when you're reading something intense, okay, it's different from seeing it on screen. Very true.
Yes.
I feel like sometimes when we're reading something that we're not comfortable with or we're not familiar with, our brain kind of skips over it. Or we can start reading something like, oh, I don't, and we can skip over it. Or we can read it, but you can kind of turn off
emotions.
the emotion with it, which is not quite the same as when you see something.
Yep.
When you see it, that picture is boom, like it's there. Like your brain didn't put it there. Sometimes it happens too fast, you can't shield it. So, and you don't have control versus having control when you're reading. So it's very different. And so for me, when she first goes to Duke, that was hard. When he let her out of the room into another room.
Well, yeah. And when she first goes to Duke, and then Rab is there, and he kills Rab right in front of her.
In front of her.
That was hard to watch on a screen with a little girl having to witness this murder.
Having to witness that, but then Duke taking her out, and as I have to teach you a few things.
Yes.
No, Eric. How dare and then the other part was
we did not talk about it with the book, but we're going to
scene
talk
with
about
her
it
dad.
now. Yeah.
So y'all don't know, but
well, unless you read the book, so you know if you read the book.
Angel remembers her father, but her father does not recognize her, and I shouldn't say remember. Of course, she remembers him, but she recognizes and knows that that's her dad. And he has no idea who she is. Remember, because he met her one time for a few minutes. Her name was Sarah.
And now he's meeting
8.
Some grown up. She was like 6 or 8 years old or something like that when he met her.
She was 6, I think.
Yeah.
And she grew up. Now she's 18, whatever. I think she was 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't know who she is, but she is offered to him, and she says nothing. So she basically has sex with her dad, and
then
afterwards
says, I'm your daughter.
And then he
the guy
commits suicide,
blows his brains out, which good for you. You should have, God.
Oh, what happened to this forgiveness and doing life with the person?
Oh my gosh, just.
This is what I'm saying. So, dark, and I said you made a liar out of me, but moving on from that. So like this, when we say it went from worse to worser, and it's not even a word, but it was rough. But let's talk about all the good stuff that came out of that. So seeing it play out, I thought it was very tasteful, because it was fade to black with Duke all the time. It was, you didn't see anything happen with her and her dad. You just saw her basically knowing it was him because you knew the name, and then her revealing it to him. And so you don't see it. You just don't see a lot of the graphic violence and all that, although or the rough.
Same with when McGowan beat her up.
Yeah.
Like you
see a hit though.
No, you see it, but I mean, it's talked about in the book, but you don't see it. And then when you see it on the screen, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I mean, the book goes into graphic.
Drown her.
And, goes a little bit more graphic than the movie, but still you don't see it. And then when you see it, you're like, you know.
But it wasn't as intense, I feel like. I feel like they still did a good job.
Yeah. No, they did.
So they showed you a little bit, and then it was like, then you see her, she's beat up on a bed, but you don't see that happening to her. She looks like she was in a horrific accident.
Right. Yeah. The same with the botched abortion.
Oh.
Not botched. It wasn't botched. You see that on the screen.
And Duke's like,
I told you, and she's screaming,
and he's there like observing and making sure the doctor does it how he wants to, or he'll off the doctor, and the doctor knows it.
Yeah, and it just seems like everything that Angel had to go through was so public. Like it wasn't. There was. She never had any private
and
moments,
at the hands of
you know.
men.
And it was always
All
at the hands of men. Yeah, she never had any kind of private moments or anything like that. Good things. We were.
What scenes did you enjoy
good
played
things.
out? What were the scenes that were good that you enjoyed being played out? Like good scenes.
I mean, I liked when the Altmans and everybody, they were dancing around the campfire at the end, like not at the end, but kind of midway points. I enjoyed that. Their little intimate moments in the barn. I'm not talking about sex. I'm just talking about where they actually talk to each other
and some of the steam.
And when he was teaching, it was funny when he was teaching her how to fish, and she kept messing stuff up, or she was. Trying to figure out how to cook and stuff like that.
You used the word.
What I did?
You said mussing stuff up.
I did. I said mussin instead of messin. Messin.
We learned a new word last week.
Yeah. So it was cute, just the way that he was. She had a friend, and so I really enjoyed those scenes where it showed them building a friendship, a relationship beyond physical things, you know.
I love the scene where after she left Michael, because she wanted him to have children, his children, and she thought that Miriam would be a much better fit for him than her. And there were people who offered right away when she went into town, they wanted her body in exchange for, money. And nope. And she went and and that's how she got connected with Virgil. And she became a cook for a short time, and then unfortunately it got burned down. But
she started making better decisions.
Yeah, she was making better decisions, really thinking about what she wanted to do and whatnot. And unfortunately, of course, Duke came back in. But I think I shared too where I really liked how they portrayed like her strength after coming out and just being like, I owe him nothing. Granted, we talked about I didn't love how it portrayed out how she just walked out and was like Duke likes little kid, whatever. But I like that newfound confidence in her for sure. I thought it was really cute and funny. What was it? Like her frustration, when she would get frustrated.
Yeah, she would get frustrated at herself, like, oh, I can't do this, and then she would finally be able to do it.
And just like the pride that came with that. And then
decorating the house, different things like that. She liked to do that. She learned how. Yep. And how appreciative he was of her, like, good job, like you could just see her, like, all these little things started adding up in her head that where she could be more. She was
and then
valued.
Her relationship with Ruth and Miriam.
Yep.
Those were fun.
Yeah, even she was talking to, I think Miriam on the porch, and she's like, she said, or Miriam asked her, how did you meet Michael? And she goes, he rescued me from a brothel. And she was just kind of like, oh, okay.
Well,
cool.
Did she laugh at first in the movie? I know in the book she laughed.
And she was like, "Oh, you're serious? Oh, okay, all right." But Miriam didn't really like she.
Yeah.
She was just like, okay, she didn't really skip a beat with her.
Miriam's
she was
like, I know who you are.
Yeah. And
Child of God.
I liked that about I like that about Angel too, just being straight up. This is who I am.
Yeah, just very raw honesty.
There was a part after Paul, when Paul was taking her to town, and then Paul had sex with her as payment for the ride to town, and she's throwing up on the side of the buggy, and then she gets to where she's going, and he lets her out way before it's time to get let out because he doesn't want to be seen with the likes of her, right? Because of her reputation, and she's such a horrible person. But she looks at him and she says, I've never covered up who I am. I've always been straight up about who I am, but you took your brother's money, wagon, and now his wife, basically what does that say about you?
Yeah.
Like, I've never been fake about who I am, but what does that make you? And you say you love him? Like, how could you say that? You've taken everything from him. And then she walks off, and I was like, yes, you go.
Go, girl.
That's right. That's right. Who do you think you are, huh? Yeah.
I know this seems weird, so don't think I'm weird. However, okay, hear me out. A moment that shocked me that I was like, wow, this Abigail Cohen as an actress, so good. When she is taunting McGowan.
Oh, yeah.
And it's in the trailer, and it's just such a moving part where she's like in his face, just do it, like.
Yeah, you would think that a
Oh
girl
my-
that's getting beat up
You would think
would
that she's
be
looking
screaming.
she's looking in the eyes of a man who she knows is going to kill her, and he has been wanting to lay into her, but she wants it at that point.
She's
She
so
wants to end her
defiant.
life,
She's
but
like, just do
so
it.
defiant and stubborn, and in that moment, she was faking so much control, but oh my God, good job, Abigail. Good job.
Yeah, but she had learned how to turn off her fear.
I know, but I mean, as an actress, to see that was really good.
It was great.
Yeah. So keep those comments and questions coming. Our final question is is the end satisfying? Has the book or movie changed you, and have you learned something?
Well, I mean, it just depends on, like, I think the time in your life when you read this book, because I had just gone through a bunch of hard stuff, and my own redemption story prior to reading this book. So it was just kind of like, wow, all the things that I had just recently learned about forgiveness and redemption and grace and all those things were being spoken out to me again through this book. So it was more, instead of learning, it was more confirmation for me than learning something new.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So, yeah. What about you?
I guess it kind of the same. It kind of solidified some lessons I was learning at the time. Like I said, I was relatively new to following the Lord at that time that I read the book, and so there was a lot of things that were hard. So I did have questions. I remember going to other people I respected and prayed about it in terms of that whole theory of why would God allow it? He can stop it. Why allow it? And then the idea of not idolizing people.
Yeah.
Is God truly first, or are the people you love first?
Yeah, that was
hard.
That was pretty pronounced to me when I watched this too. Was that whole, when Angel was starting to put Michael up on a pedestal, like her God, her savior. I have done that in the past unknowingly.
Yeah. I think it's hard in any case. Like, imagine, I mean, you have kids, so imagine your kid walking away, and it's like you want to go.
Oh yeah, prodigal son stories and all that. Yeah.
So that was another lesson for me was the idea that you have to let go and let God. Especially because at that moment of my life, I was exhausted because you think you're helping people and you want to help them, and if you just love them hard enough, if you just help them enough, it's gonna change. They're gonna change.
This is.
I'm talking, when it comes friendships and this or that, and I just was feeling so depleted and exhausted because what was happening was I'm dragging them and doing the work for them,
and then getting
mad thriving off
and getting mad too at them and getting resentful that
they're thriving off of
taking your advice.
And then I'm just like, forget this, I can't do this anymore. And then all of a sudden I'm the horrible person and all this, but I wasn't understanding. I had such a perspective that like I said, if I loved somebody enough, it would change, or they would be fixed, or they would be whole.
Right.
So I was unlearning that because I was having to learn to let go and let God.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a point where you're like, you know what, God, I can't do this. I'm giving this person to you.
Had to learn boundaries and had to learn how to say no and all the things. But I really saw that in Michael, actually, when he was struggling and having to let her go and trust that God would, what will be is what will be. And
what about Michael with Paul? We talked about Angel forgiving Paul, but what about Michael?
Michael forgave him immediately.
Of course, but
He's like, I don't want to know. Because he knew. He knew. He's like, just don't tell me. I don't want to hear it.
Right. But
But
Paul, still let him
Paul
live
told
there.
Michael, but
in the movie he
Angel,
does.
Oh, okay. Angel in the book was who told him.
Angel in the movie, and Angel tells Michael in the movie, and then Michael says, well, I knew something happened with the way he was acting.
Yeah.
I already knew.
That's happened in the book too.
Yeah. So that happened. But yeah, I was just thinking just now to myself, like,
but Paul did not, and Paul didn't even see it or realize it because he was still sniveling and sniffing and huffing and puffing when he came back to find Angel. Like, I think Miriam's request in the book, right? Yeah. And then he realizes, oh my gosh, I was so wrong.
I had her so wrong. And Angel, it says something about Angel too. I noticed how she never let him think differently. Like, he had this.
He said that. He
had this awful opinion of her, and she never contradicted him. She never said, but wait a second, I did this. Yeah. I often feel like I need to defend myself when people have the wrong impression or the wrong story about me, or that's not what happened really. You need to know my side.
And the realization hit him, at least in the book at that moment. And it was another God moment. And then they talked about it and forgave each other. And she's like, okay, let's move on now. Yeah. But because she's like, tell me everything, basically because she saw him as a changed man, except how he was initially handling her. But she was able to handle it in stride, and it was just like, you're not affecting me anymore. You're not ruffling my feathers.
Right.
Because I am new and whole in Christ.
I'm clean. Oh, that's another thing we didn't talk about was when she scrubbed herself in the water. She scrubbed herself raw.
Yeah, but where are we fitting that?
I don't know. I don't know. We can take that away.
We could talk about how what she's referring to is when Angel is first rescued by Michael. She goes. It's when she goes into town, and it's all this. She gets there in a horrible way because of Paul. And then she wants her motivation is, I earned this money from Duchess. I want my gold, and I'm gonna go live on my own. Make my own rules, do whatever the dang I want to do. And she was so looking forward to having what she considered freedom, which is basically isolation, where she doesn't have to be answering to anybody but herself. And it's burnt down. And the town is basically a ghost town, except for the bar, little pub across the way. And she goes in, and they all know her as Angel. And so they immediately... And the whatever his name was, not Michael, what's the bartender's name? Anyways, Murphy, I think it was. And he was like, I'll 60-40. Then I pay for all your lodging and clothes and all that. And she's like, 50-50. And I was like, no. And she realizes as soon as it happens.
Yeah.
It was so gross.
That's also in the movie, but Michael comes and rescues her.
Yeah, well, what was hard in the book was she mentioned, she goes, and Murphy wanted the works. I have no idea what that means, but
we don't. You can just imagine what the works means.
And then by the time Michael gets there, because he is pressed so fervently from God, by the time Michael gets there, can you imagine you're opening this door and seeing your wife in the act of something
horrible,
so precious, that's supposed to be so precious, in the middle of that act with another man?
Mm-hmm.
But the book also was portraying the whole time in her head, she doesn't want to be there. She knows it's a mistake. How do I get out of this? I wish I never left Michael. And then he's like there. And he saw her look of sheer relief at his presence, that he was back. And then, he fought his way out of there.
Yep.
He became Goliath and just knocking everybody down.
Yes.
And saved her.
And then I spoke of this earlier when she was... she witnessed Michael crying in the barn by himself, and he's like boo-hoo sobbing and crying and praying to God. And that's when she went down to the water and started scrubbing herself.
Yeah, so this is after. So he saw that. His heart is broken. He loves this woman so much. They get back after, he just physically assaulted so many men, rescued his wife, who in his mind, he probably envisioned it as her being raped, essentially. To see your wife be in that position. And then he gets her home to safety, and he just has a moment where he breaks down. And Angel has a moment where
she's like,
she
I'm
does
just
start to
not
crack.
clean. I'm not clean
she
for
starts
him.
to crack and lets emotion come in. She can no longer just turn it all off. She can no longer be numb to everything that's happened to her in her life. And she goes down to the really freezing cold river to take a bath, and she winds up like, it's such a trauma response that she is literally scrubbing her skin, so she's like has all these red marks, and she's hurt herself.
And Michael
he
finds
has to
her.
Stop her.
Yeah, he finds her like that, and he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm not clean. I'm not clean." And
I'm not clean enough for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he gets her out, and it was
a turning point a little bit for them, because then she opened up a little bit to him, and he opened up to her a little bit more, because she had this. She was starting to idolize him, because she's like, he knows nothing of my life. He's had it. She was picturing it as him having like this perfect, good life. Of course he can have these responses. He's never been tested. He's never had anything bad.
And that's when he opens up. I think he realized that's when he opens up and starts telling her about his life. Yeah. And that's when he tells her about his childhood with his dad and the slaves and all of that and what happened. So, and she starts to go, oh, he hasn't had it all.
Yeah, it's not been all peaches and cream and rose fields. And,
over here, yeah. So.
And pumpkin pies with extra whipped cream.
Exactly. So all in all, I mean, I think you can say that Laura and I absolutely love the book and the movie, and would highly recommend it to anyone and everyone.
5 stars for both the movie and the book.
Yes, 5 stars.
Highly suggest reading it. If all you've done is watch the movie, definitely suggest you read the book.
Absolutely read it. Absolutely read it.
And vice versa. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised with the movie if you've read the book.
And if there's anything, of course, you want to add that we missed, then comment, and we will do some live TikTok later or something. Yeah, like that.
And just a reminder too that the content ratings and spice ratings will be up on our website. And we just, encourage you to, if you are reading a book and leaving a review, to let us know what you think the content rating would be and the spice rating. Again, the goal is to get more and more people utilizing the system for the benefit of readers and also the authors as well. If you are an author yourself, I would be so thankful if you also utilize the rating system for both content and spice, because I think, as I shared before, readers have a right to know what's in our books without spoiling anything. So I think it's a win-win, and it will be of no cost to you. And we look forward to getting together with you guys for our next book. That will also be on our website, so you guys can read ahead, so there won't be any spoilers for you when we come to discuss it.
Exactly. So our email address is blooppodcast@gmail.com, and that's 2 P's. Blooppodcast.
Blooppodcast.
Yes. Or you can find us on any other social media that you use.
Or wherever you stream.
Yes. So enjoy your evening, guys, and thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, we hope you have a blessed evening.
Bloop, bloop.
Bloop, 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 bloop.
Bloop, bloop, like bye-bye.